All right, welcome back to the Gym Life Podcast. My name is Joe Janiga, and welcome to the show. This is a special episode of the PSL U64 World Championships review, kind of a dual-purpose show because I'm going to go ahead and announce on behalf of our rankings committee the new adjusted rankings of the 64s. And as I'd mentioned to you guys in prior episodes, more particular the one last week, we talked about the rankings and kind of how we knew this show was going to have an impact on those rankings. But at the same time, we felt pretty confident where those rankings were and didn't think they were going to be turned upside down. And although there were some moments there, I think eventually everything kind of evened out. Obviously, there were some things that happened in this show that, let's just say, are a good way to make us all aware of how we place people based on performance sometimes, as opposed to finishing and some of the other criteria maybe that we use when it comes to determining where we place these ladies at, or all these athletes at moving forward through competitions. And I'll give you some of those examples when I get to the rankings and how our thought process kind of works when we're discussing, who needs to, be jockeyed around or added to the list, or maybe who falls off the list and for what reasons and those type of things. So yeah, it was a great sort of beta test for our initial rankings, and we weren't too far off. And again, we'll talk about those in a little bit. But yeah, let's get to the story at hand, and that, of course, is the inaugural PSL, Pro Strongman League event that was held in Denver, Colorado over Father's Day weekend a couple days back. And, I watched the show twice. I watched it on the replay twice. I didn't get a chance to see it live. It was Father's Day weekend for many of us. I'm sure we had very busy weekends, as nice as it was outside as well. And as much as I'd like to have gotten in front of the computer to watch it, I don't think my kids would have let it happen. So I waited till I had a nice 3 hours to myself, which isn't easy to find, and just really kind of take it in, from getting ready to review it anyhow. I wanted to make sure that I gave you guys kind of my subjective look at, all the intangibles of this show, because it's so important, right? We think about the athletes and obviously look forward to their performances and the things that they're going to do in respect to that competition or any particular competition. But, there's all these other things that kind of go on as well behind the scenes that create sort of this backdrop for this great sport that we're all a part of and what we love about our sport. And it all goes hand in hand. And like I'd mentioned before in prior episodes, it's an ecosystem. All this goes together because it really kind of paints the broader picture of the way we want our sport represented, not just in our own strength community, but and beyond. We want to break barriers. We want to get other people involved in our sport. And a big part of that are these promotions and the things that they provide from a spectating standpoint that are going to lend to the pageantry of our sport. So that's why I get into some of these reviews a bit deeper than just talking about athlete and athlete performances. However, we will mention a few of those as well here today. But as many of you know, the way I like to do my reviews is kind of from the bottom up. And that's all the intangibles all the way up through the athletes and kind of how they finished off. And, that's kind of how I'll start today, I think. I made a lot of notes behind the scenes stuff, and I think we can all appreciate, and these people deserve to be recognized as well. I think, let's see, where can I start? So as I was watching the show, I thought to myself, what is one word to describe my overall feeling to start? And was I disappointed? Was it just, take me over the moon kind of thing? What did I feel after I was watching that show? I think the best word to describe it that I could come up with is I was satisfied. It was a satisfying show. Are there some intangibles that can be worked on? Is there some constructive criticism that I can, maybe nitpick and which I will, by the way, I'll mention those things to you. But yeah, of course, this was the first event for PSL. Despite the experience behind the scenes, every new organization, and anytime a new promotion comes out, there's things immediately that you want to change. And there's some things that you find out kind of during the process or especially during the show. You're like, shit, I better make note of that and maybe change that moving forward. Or, ultimately it's a work in progress, right? It doesn't matter how many times you've done a promotion. When you're trying to brand something new, you have new ideas going into it, and you got to kind of beta test those new ideas as well and see how they're going to resonate with everybody and see how they're going to work overall logistically. And I think that's kind of what we saw at PSL. It was a great event. It was a great inaugural event. But it can get better from there. And I think Tyler and his group are already looking at all these things. And I'm just going to be redundant about them. He's probably going, hey, Joe, no kidding. I already wrote those down. But, so there were just a few small criticisms and maybe more questions. I don't know. And this is maybe some things that could be answered by Tyler and maybe others as we move forward to the next event and kind of, find out what's being changed, what's not being changed, those kind of things. And maybe we'll get with Tyler to figure that stuff out too. But okay, without any further ado, this is what I got for you. So first off, I will say the venue was the venue, right? Let's just start from the box itself and where this event took place. I will tell you, I like the idea of the AstroTurf. I like the confined sort of space, the box of it, right? It wasn't too sort of stretched out that made the live stream difficult to watch, which I really appreciated because I felt like I was kind of on top of all the events. I got to see both lanes very clearly. I know from a logistical standpoint and the way that Don operates at ADL, his primary focus in the beginning is making sure he can give you guys as much access to every one of these events as possible. And certain venues allow certain things. Unfortunately, there's not an awful lot you can do in some venues, and there's more than you can do or more that you have an opportunity to do in bigger venues with bigger space and higher ceilings and all that kind of stuff to be able to mount cameras, position cameras, and that kind of thing. I will tell you that's always on top of Don's mind, a little bit behind the scenes for you. Yeah, and he nailed it, of course. I mean, there was little opportunity, I think, to get really creative with shots, but I think everything we saw there was beautiful. The static platforms, of course, the lanes weren't very long. They were compressed a bit, so we were able to get one camera shot into two lanes. I think it was perfect. I didn't complain about it. I got to see everything I wanted to see. I think ultimately, that went off without a hitch, and to no surprise, ADL is they're top notch when it comes to strongman live streaming. I've said it before. I'll always say it, albeit friends of mine. I say it the way I see it. They're tip of the spear when it comes to live streaming the sport of strongman, and their experience shines through show after show after show. So live stream was perfect. Venue was just fine. Nothing really to complain about that at all. The AstroTurf was kind of nice. I thought, our sport is, of course, we can actually do our sport in a lot of different types of venues, of course. We can do it on grass and AstroTurf and pavement and parking lots and cement floors and that kind of thing. But I really like the AstroTurf. I like the backdrop that kind of created with the signage, with the implements, with the athletes. It kind of lent to the professionalism of it all. I know it's that's just a silly thing to mention, but I like that. It there was a professional sports quality to it when you kind of see it from that perspective, as opposed to looking at asphalt or some type of, parking lot or something, so that was cool. The signage, the backdrop in the event itself, I know PSL is going to get better about that. There's some holes in that as far as like the visual goes in the production, in large part because, they're growing as an organization. They're going to get all the banners up, and each particular show is going to provide a little bit different of a challenge when it comes to how they're going to kind of position everything to create this shot, no matter where that camera turned. There were moments where I felt like I was watching this, crazy sort of Pro Strongman League, new sort of organization. And there were times it panned and I felt like I was just sitting in like a little gym or something on the sidelines in a lawn chair at some of the shows like what we go on to. And again, nothing wrong with that. I'm being really nitpicky right now, but those were just some of the things that I kind of picked up on when I was watching it. And like from a spectating point of view, how would I feel watching this live stream, and what would I get the professionalism and the quality that I know PSL wants to project moving forward, as this type of organization, a professional strongman organization. So, I'd give it a B in that sense. I thought it was good enough, and I know it's only going to get better. The announcers, Katara Taylor, CJ Kraus, you guys nailed it. Listen, you guys absolutely nailed it. It is not an easy thing to do to commentate a show, guys. Being behind the mic like I am on this side of the sport right now, I can relate. It is a very, very challenging thing to do, to create some on-the-spot chemistry and have this back and forth that just kind of flows throughout a show, especially a show like Strongman, where there's a lot of downtime and there's a lot of quiet moments. CJ and Katara did not disappoint. They filled that with a ton of information about the athletes, a ton of information about the events. They added some levity to it, which I thought was great. I knew that CJ was announcing this show maybe just a few days out, and my first thought was, oh, I know CJ. I've had an opportunity to talk with him. He's a very outgoing character, one of the bigger personalities in our sport. I had no doubt he was going to lend something to this show, and I knew it would be good no matter, but I really liked kind of that dialed back, very intuitive sort of mindset that he brought to this, along with Katera. I thought it really went well, guys. I'm sure you guys didn't probably pay much mind to the commentating like I do. Again, it's probably more because I sit behind this microphone and do what I do. I know how challenging that can be, and I really, really appreciated what those two did. It really easy to listen to. I think my only one, and it's not even their problem, really. It's just what they're given to kind of give back to you guys, is we just need more information, right? We want to hear more information. And I think they were kind of waiting on information to get to them, particularly with the scoring, but also, too, I think more, and maybe this is more of a graphics thing that needs to be given over to ADL by PSL, and that's just more graphic on the athletes, more I guess you say insight on their titles, their accomplishments, their records, because we had a lot of amazing women competing in this show that had a lot of records. Their resumes were as long as my arm, and I think I would want to hear more of that, and in large part because I don't want to take it for granted that I know about the sport. I want people to come into our sport to immediately be inundated in it and indoctrinated in it with the resume of these athletes that they're watching. And I felt like I'm not a part of it, but they missed the boat on that. I mean, you could have talked about Rhea the whole day if you wanted to and all of her accomplishments. And, of course, you could spread that love to every one of those athletes about their national championships and their world records and things of that nature. And we just didn't get that, and I thought that was kind of something that was missed. In the future, I'm sure they're probably already working on something to kind of bring these graphics to maybe to the live stream, or at least bring that information to the commentators. And whether that's their job or not, listen, I'm not going to knock it. Again, this is a growing, organization. These things are going to tighten up. These things are going to get better. But I think I would have loved to hear a little bit more about the athletes' resumes, their bios. I'd like to know how tall they were. I'd like to know how much they weighed. It's just all these little things that we know we get in other sport that we need to bring to our sport to make our athletes more recognizable by the general viewing public, not just take it for granted that everybody watching the show is a strongman athlete or already a fan or some part of the sport. And I think that was kind of missed. So I'll go. That's as far as I'll go with that. The MC, the Master of Ceremonies. Nobody told me it was going to be Adam Geiger. I love Adam Geiger. Listen, that's another great hit for the PSL group. Adam Geiger is one of the biggest personalities in the sport, as many of us know. He's a social media guy. He understands how to talk to the public. He's got a lot of energy behind him. I was kind of listening a bit behind Katera and CJ to Adam throughout the show because I was really interested to see how he was kind of delivering the show. And I thought he did a great job. I mean, listen, there's a lot of great MCs, a lot of great Master of Ceremonies type guys or whatever you want to call them in our sport that are announcing these shows live. And I think we're blessed. We got a lot of big personalities in the sport. None bigger, of course, than Adam Geiger. I mean, he's just one of those guys. So, yeah, they hit it out of the park with him. I've got a couple off the top of my head, too, that they could have inserted there and had the same result. But it's just nice to see that we're so deep when it comes to, having these type of personalities represent us, especially in front of that spectating audience. I was listening to Adam. I thought he did fantastic. I have zero complaints. And matter of fact, I wish I was there live because I'm more than certain he entertained that audience. With his dynamic nature and the energy that he brings to everything he does. And if you don't believe me, go to his Instagram and you'll get to see all the crazy shit that he does. TikTok too, I think. But in any case, great job, Adam. Love that. Third, behind the scenes that I really enjoyed. And listen, I think we're all in the same boat out there. It was just such a pleasure to see good judging. Oh, man, don't we take that for granted? Isn't that funny that we have to say that? Like, oh, my God, finally good judging. Corey Butler knocked it out of the park. I listen, I know there are a lot of great people out there. This is not a knock on any other judge in our sport, but Corey Butler set the bar and set the bar very high. It was just amazing watching her interact with these athletes, her attention to detail. I love that sort of in-frame look that we got right off the bat with Corey when it came to judging the log. That just kind of set the stage for it, right? You knew you were really getting some good judging there, and I know the athletes appreciate it. Listen, she was a very tough judge. She didn't let anything get by, and as an athlete, you don't want that to happen anyhow because you want it to be very, you just want it to be very steady across the board when it comes to how every one of them individually are judged the same. Corey didn't disappoint. Listen, the log itself is probably one of the more difficult, any pressing movement for that matter, is probably one of the more difficult things to judge in our sport because you're looking from top to bottom to this athlete. Feet parallel, body under control, log pressed and locked out, head through, that kind of thing. And you got to pick all that up within a fraction of a second. You don't want that athlete staring at you too long and blowing their energy up, waiting for the down command. And at the same time, the judge doesn't want to miss any of those tangibles because we don't need the controversy over it. And we certainly don't want to give an athlete a lockout or a good lift when we can all plainly see it wasn't, right? There's that controversial kind of moments that happen in our sport where we pick up on it all the time and the judges are aloof to it in other events that we've seen. And it's been very disappointing. It starts a lot of controversy, particularly with world records and things, right? I mean, how many world records do we have in our sport that probably aren't world records simply because the judging was of poor quality? Well, listen, Corey didn't bring that at all. I mean, she brought, like I said, just hit it out of the park. She brought quality judging to a quality event. And listen, you can't say your event is a professional organization without professional judging. That is a fact. And we got that there with Corey Butler. It was absolutely fantastic to watch her judge. And I love, again, that in-frame look with her on the log. She was kind of in that frame, giving that down command. And as we were spectating, or as I was spectating it, I was anticipating her down command based off of what I was seeing and what she was looking for. And again, it was just a great way to kind of enjoy it, especially if I was somebody new to the sport. It was very easy for me to see what Corey was looking for when it came to a good lift. And again, if I put myself in the mindset of a spectator that doesn't know the sport real well, she made it very evident what she was looking for. And that is what I really, really appreciated about her judging. And then, of course, the athlete interaction. There was a ton of sportsmanship with the judges at that show. You watched Ree shake the hands of Corey. You saw Holly do the same thing coming off the log with her judge. I mean, these are the type of things that really lend to the just the brilliance of our sport. So, yeah, I think that all the intangibles of this show were right where they needed to be. Listen, it's to no secret, I've mentioned it many times, that I thought one of the best things about the Pro Strongman League was the people that they had involved. They just have good people involved that are all about the betterment of this sport and representing the sport well. And we saw it right down the line from the announcers, MC, judging. We saw it from the volunteers. We saw it from everybody, including the live stream, of course, that was interacting with the show. Zero disappointment there. Plenty of room to get better and tighten things up. I think we can all agree. That's always a work in progress. But ultimately, I think it was a great start to a new organization, the Professional Strongman League. Remember that. Pro Strongman League isn't necessarily about the athletes. It's about everybody involved. So I think we saw that at that level. Of course, we all came to see, and this was the hype leading up to the show, that the 64 class was going to be a great inaugural start for the Pro Strongman League. Listen, we can all contest that or attest to the fact that the 64s are probably one of the most exciting classes of all strongmen and strongwomen. Certainly the most competitive from top to bottom. We've got some outliers, of course, that are on top of the world, and that's what makes that class equally as fun, because there's a lot of talented ladies chasing some of these ladies, or they're all essentially chasing one another. Honestly, for every show, as we saw on this show, there was a lot of jockeying around, and I think we all appreciated that. I mean, right out of the gate, we were seeing a couple things that we thought, oh boy, I didn't quite anticipate that. So, yeah, the 64s, no disappointment. 7 of those ladies were in our top 10 to start off. Our initial rankings, of course, for official strongman rankings. Several of them were outliers that were in the conversation. And now, of course, we see some newcomers coming into this event as well that are getting us going, okay, where'd she come from? And maybe, like myself, who weren't familiar with some of the ladies that were competing on this as well as I should have been. Boy, it was a lot of fun to watch because I got my head, the wheels turning a bit as far as to what I might anticipate in the future with some of the talent that we saw that competed out there over the weekend. So, again, it was a great start or a great inaugural event to have the 64s represent the PSL right out of the gate in Denver over the weekend. But getting to the events and getting to kind of my take on them all with a little bit of the athletes thrown in there too. The log was a lot of fun. I thought it was a great start as it is in many events. The pressing generally is where everybody starts. I thought it was great. I think we saw what we expected to see there. I think the 12-inch log was the real sort of question mark as to how these ladies were going to handle that. It's not something they see that often, if ever, for that matter, which made me kind of question the fact, why are we seeing it now? I just say that because I think that for the 64 class, the stature of these women, generally about 5 foot, 1 or 2, or where many of them kind of fall into at 145 pounds, that's a pretty ominous log to kind of set on their chest. And I think we kind of saw that. They all muscled through it fine. Nobody blew the doors off the wagon. I think we saw what we thought we were going to see. Everybody was going to kind of be bunched up around 180, 200 pounds, many of them. 205, of course, winning it. I will say that congratulations, Taylor Woods, new Canadian record at 205. Who else did it? Oh, that's right. Meg Lotta did it. New Zealand, new record at 180 pounds. But I don't think anybody thought Kate's world record was going to be broke here. And if anybody was going to do it, it'd probably be Kate. And Kate, of course, had a little bit of a wrist injury. So we knew kind of going into it that we weren't going to necessarily see what we have seen from her in the past. And again, the 12-inch log was sort of the outlier. How are they going to respond to that log? And I think you know what? I'm putting words in their mouths, but I think maybe they struggled through it a little bit. I thought it was very tough to steady. I know initially CJ was saying, well, it might be their nerves. I don't know about that. That log seemed a bit tough to lock out and to unsteady these girls at the top. I thought it was real tough for them to get their elbows underneath of it, to get out of that position where that log was kind of sitting heavy on the front of their chest and sort of leaning them forward a bit. It certainly affected their form because a lot of the ladies that we generally see with a nice split jerk didn't even do a split jerk. There was more of a push press, more of a static press, really. There wasn't a lot of triple extension there either with getting that log and that explosion from the chest. I don't know. I think we got what we got out of the log. I would just question the PSL as to why they're using a 12-inch log. Is that just their thing moving forward? If it is, that's fine. I guess if you're going to compete with the PSL, this is what you're going to use as a 64. Or is this kind of made more of a beta test, and their thoughts are maybe they're going to go back to a 10-inch log or to a 10-inch log, so maybe we can see a different side of these ladies when it comes to pressing, or maybe the ladies don't give a fuck. I don't know. I mean, just kind of a question I'm bringing up in my own mind because I do believe, right, the world record was set on a 10-inch log. Maybe I should have called Luke up before I did my show here. Of course, he would have that right off the top of his head. But if that's the case, then what are we looking at? A PSL record? Was that set over the weekend? 205 pounds? I don't know. I guess my confusion is the 12-inch log. I just kind of surprised me a little bit. I didn't know going into it that it was a 12-inch log press. And again, maybe I would have posed these questions earlier in the week leading up to the event. Some of the standouts, of course, I mentioned that. Panda had a nice lift at 190 pounds. She looked really good on it, had a great first start, finished fourth in that event. Kate, Crystal, and Taylor all tied the event. So right off the bat, some names we didn't see in that top 4, top 5 that maybe we thought we were going to see there. It kind of shook things up immediately. But again, the log press was no disappointment. I enjoyed it. And I especially enjoyed watching Corey interact with those athletes with their lockouts and kind of how we anticipated that from spectating. At least I did from home, going, wow, she's spot on. That was kind of fun. I got more out of that, I think, than the actual drama of the log lift. A lot of great second attempts, by the way. A lot of recovery moments for these girls. Missing first attempt, getting second attempt, which is no easy feat. Who else? Kim Scott, great looking press by Kim Scott, actually. And I don't know Kim that well. Apparently she's from the area, but I thought she was super impressive to watch. And I'm not sure if Kim's new to the sport or coming back into the sport, but I intend to find out a little bit more about Kim because, again, along with her and along with a couple others, I was like, okay, we got a good crop of ladies, that are kind of coming up, and they're going to be fun to watch. And I thought this is a great opportunity for them to kind of see, or for us to see, where they stood up against maybe some of the best, if not the best in the world. Axle deadlifts. This was kind of a fun one. And I think for a lot of us, it was fun because we were surprised to see what we saw from a couple of the ladies contesting the world's greatest deadlifter. And that, of course, is Rhiannon Lovelace. Ended up with 11 reps. She tied for second in this event to Taylor Woods, and she tied with Sherry and Deanna, who I thought Deanna was really the standout for me in this event. She kind of led the way. I think she led early before those other three ladies had their attempt, and with her 11 reps, they were just beautiful. Very indicative of Restyle a bit on a quick pull kind of hitch kind of thing. It was more of a hybrid type movement. There wasn't a big long hitch like we see from like a Rob Kearney kind of hitch, but it was just beautiful to watch. I thought she was flawless in this event, and it really got my eyes kind of looking at Deanna a little bit because, again, she was one of those ladies that I had a little bit of contest history. I'd never seen her compete before. Some of the other part of our rankings group was mentioning her, and it brought my eyes right to her, as I hope it did for a lot of you guys out there in respect to our rankings, kind of drawing your attention to certain women, because she certainly proved to me that she deserved to be in the top 10 based on her performance at this show. What were the other ones? Deanna was, her technique was awesome. Again, that was the kind of the highlight for me. And a bit of the question mark was watching Ree not win a deadlift event, which I know she's saying, Joe, I can't win them all. I get that totally. But I'm probably not the only one that thought that. I had little concern though moving forward. She's great in every event, and I knew kind of coming, up from behind is nothing new to Ree. She doesn't lead shows from wire to wire all the time, and I know she's a gamer when it comes to getting these events done. So I had a little concern. I know you guys are saying, "Oh, sure you did." No, I'm serious. I didn't. I had zero doubt. Plus, I was listening to Luke on our feed. We were kind of DMing one another. The rankings group was, and I was listening to Luke talk about Rhea and her performance as I was sneaking a look here and there in between all the barbecuing, and he was just kind of making his argument like, "Don't you worry, guys. Don't you worry. She's going to be just fine," and she was, of course. Moving on, we had the yoke walk power stairs. Now, this was an interesting event for me. I have a couple, I don't even know if we want to call them constructive criticisms or not. I'm not even sure. Yoke, no problem, right? That's a staple event. Everybody gets that. And the girls all did well in it. Some moved quicker than others. I was a bit surprised maybe that some didn't move as quick as they should have. And neither here nor there, though, especially coming off that axle deadlift. That could take a lot out of you, as many of you know, out there that compete. And that's kind of what we get in these shows, right? Positioning of events sometimes affects the result based on, athletes' ability to recover and get back out there and perform at a high level at the next event. I think we saw a little bit of that, especially in the yoke. Duck walk, not so much. I don't think the weight was overly heavy for these ladies. They moved it really well. Some moved it better than others. Holly McRae exploded through the duck walk. No surprise. I mean, her posterior chain is crazy. And she did a great job getting them up. I think Panda was a fun one to watch for me. That was kind of maybe just a highlight moment because, God, she's so aggressive when she moves through her weight sometimes. And I like the fact that she kind of readjusted herself to zerker that weight up on that last step or the second step. I thought, however, though I give kudos to all the ladies out there for adjusting to a zerker to get the weight up on that final step. Is that really what that event's all about? My question is, that step was probably 18 inches, and most of these women are 5 foot tall. So you guys can probably relate there, especially let's say you guys are 6 foot tall. If you had to deal with a 24-inch step, how difficult that would be to shrug that up to that top step. We saw a lot of these ladies run into that. So my question is to the PSL, are we going to see power stairs moving forward? And if so, are we going to see an 18-inch or a 17-inch step for that final step? Some of the ladies had no problem with it. Listen, Kim Scott, no problem. Sherry Zimmerman, no problem. These are the taller ladies, of course, that were able to kind of one motion it or to get it up there with no problem from a shrugging standpoint. However, even some of the smaller ladies, I guess, got it up there. I think maybe there were, I don't know, I want to say 4 or 5 girls that, had to zerker that weight to get it up there. And, maybe you guys are you're complaining about nothing, Joe. This is just strongman, strong women. You got to adapt, overcome, and get the weight to move. Yeah, okay, maybe you're right. But that's not how I view a power stair. It's just, to me, it just kind of changes the kind of the way that implement should be sort of trained and performed. I don't know. That just thought, a little constructive criticism. Do we like seeing that zerker adjustment in the power stair, or is that becoming more of a handicap for maybe the smaller stature women in that 64 class to be able to, to be able to stay in the rankings or stay in a good finishing spot in that particular event? I don't know. I'm posing that question to you guys. Again, I'm not trying to be overly critical. I'm just posing the question because obviously that takes a little more time to zerker the weight than it does just to kind of, get it up in a motion through a shrug or something. So yeah, that was cool. The event was. There was only one issue I had with that. And of course, I want to, before I say the issue, besides the 18-inch, so the second issue, right, is Crystal Stanek. She impressed me the whole day, honestly. I think she ran out of gas towards the end, but her power stairs were fun to watch as well. Diana Ferrer made kind of a mistake in the backstop or the top step, I should say, without a backstop, right? So when you're loading that top implement, she loaded it so quickly, it was so much force that it flew off the back of the step. She'd already gotten down to the second implement when she was told to come back, repick the weight, walk it around the front of the steps again, get it back up the steps and set it, of course, on the top without it going over the back. I understand that's a part of strongman, strong woman as well. I mean, to be in control of the weight. But it's not uncommon that we see judges or volunteers behind our loading platforms just being sure weight doesn't slide off the back. Because if you look at that on replay, it seemed like it did a lot of sliding to me. I felt like she was in control of the weight. And maybe some of you would disagree with me, and it's, again, a part of the sport, being in control of the weight. I see that on the lockouts. I really do, guys, but I don't know about the loading. I would argue against that, actually. I think it shouldn't be the athlete's concern how that weight sits up on the platform as long as it's up to the platform. I also say that with like loading medleys. I don't care how the weight sets on the platform. Why do we need to set the keg up upright? I mean, I get it. That's a part of it, I guess, and that's just our sport. But I would question whether or not that's even necessary at that point, because a loading medley is a loading medley. If you think about the pure nature of that, if I was doing an old-fashioned loading medley in the back of a truck, which essentially is kind of maybe the roots of this event, I'm just throwing shit in the back of the truck. I'm not worried about standing it up. So that would be my argument. That's not much of an argument I get, but I just hated to see that, I think, for Deanna in particular, because when she, of course, went off the back with the back of that stair with that implement, I was just like, oh no. She was in such a good spot at that point. She ended up taking 10th in the show, but that was a real changer. That was a game changer for her. She'd really been performing well up to that point. And again, that's our sport. Sometimes there's one off, and that's why I mentioned to you guys before, sometimes when it comes to how we perceive these women in the rankings, that's why it's so important to watch these shows. You have to get your eyes on these performances. Otherwise, you're looking at a spreadsheet, you're looking at her performance in that particular event or the final standings, and you're going, well, she didn't do as well as maybe we thought. But that's not true. She was in a really good position leading up to that, as was Panda, by the way. Panda, I think, after 3 events was like in 3rd or 4th place. She ended up getting injured, of course, and then falling off towards the end, and I think she ended up taking 9th place, but that was our point, or some of our conversation, or my conversation about our group and how we're perceiving our rankings, that it's important to see the actual competition and how these ladies perform, because there's so many one-offs in competition that it wouldn't be fair to not kind of use that as some of our criteria when it comes to placing these women where they belong, because you can't necessarily punish them all the time for blowing a hamstring out or maybe having a weight fall off the back of a power stair. Ultimately, that's a game changer in the standings for that particular show. And maybe over time that could affect an athlete if show after show after show they can't finish properly. Then yeah, but I don't think off the get go we're going to say, okay, Deanna and Christine didn't deserve to be there, because they did, because ultimately they were in better positions leading up to the finals of that show. If that made any sense to any of you guys out there. So yeah, moving on. Next event was the carry medley. I like the carry medley. Listen, there's nothing to really report about that. It's a carry medley. We all know that. It was a sandbag. It was a metal block. It was a fire hydrant, and it was a keg. You saw a lot of these ladies kind of towards that carry medley struggle a bit, I think, because of the length of the day, the altitude. You got to remember, they just done a yoke prior, they just done duck walk prior, they just did the axle deadlift prior, so they were spent at that point. And I think we saw that, and what we did see was some of these ladies like Ree, maybe Sherry Zimmerman, Kate for sure. They just started inching their way back up to the top of the podium from there. And again, that's the beauty of our sport. We have to complete 5 events. We have to get through them. Some of the ladies had some injuries they were dealing with, so it made it very difficult for them to complete that event, if even completed at all. So again, a part of our sport, that's the way this works. The cream eventually rises to the top, barring any injury. Most of these ladies are going to get through these events, but ultimately the ones that stay away from injury, the ones that are conditioned the best, the ones that are on top of our sport are generally the ones we're going to find chasing that podium at the end. But it was very nice to see so many new names like Crystal Stanzik and Sherry Zimmerman. I really liked watching Meg Lotta. She was a lot of fun from New Zealand. I really, really liked watching Kate Scott too, and matter of fact, all of them. Peyton Day. I mean, listen, I took this kind of from a different perspective because I knew what we were seeing there was a tale of two worlds, right? We had the top of the food chain and a lot of up and coming names that we needed to get familiar with and to see how they would compete in this type of competition against this type of competition. And I don't think one of us were disappointed. I thought it was a great, great show. The last event, of course, was Stone Over Bar and or Stone Off or whatever PSL's calling it. I used to be a big fan of this event. I think last year I was saying I want to see it in every show. I'm not so sure anymore I want to see it in every show. I don't. It's a drag. It's just not very dramatic outside of maybe those one or two outliers, particularly Meg Lotta and Carly Oliveira. By the way, Carly Oliveira, she just ceases to amaze me, guys. Before I get on the beautiful Stone, the event that she had, she's a gamer. And she's not afraid to compete in the 64s, the 73s, the 82s. She's always in phenomenal condition. And it wasn't a surprise to see me watch Carly move up the ranks once we got past log and deadlift. She's very capable in both those events, although some might argue that we thought maybe she'd do a little bit better in the log. Again, it could have been the 12-inch log. I kind of knew Carly was going to make her way back because moving events are hers, and she's very, very good at stones. Her endurance is off the charts. We saw it. She was amazing on the stones. Her and Meg were going back and forth. Oh my God, it was so dramatic, so much fun to watch. Meg in the end kind of fell with that as she was triple extending that stone, and fortunately she wasn't injured for the second time. She also passed out during the power stairs. And Meg, maybe that was because you traveled so far. Maybe it's because you came from New Zealand and you're a mile high in the United States after traveling halfway around the world. But you guys can't even imagine, I'm sure, and I don't even know what that would do to her body from a conditioning or a standpoint of being ready to compete. Not making up any excuses for you, Meg, but kudos to you for getting to a competition and having to endure those type of odds to begin with. But you're a grinder, and quite honestly, you're one of the most intense competitors I've ever seen. You literally go to the very end, do or bust. You remind me of Matt McKeegan a bit. You're either going to get this shit done or you're going to pass out trying, and it was super dramatic and fun to watch. I'm glad you're okay. That stone was a bit scary kind of coming down on you towards the end, but it looks like it missed everything, and you're no worse for wear. So hopefully you're still enjoying a few days out there in Denver. But getting back to Carly, she had an amazing load. One of the coolest things to watch, if you go back to the replay, was watch Carly midway through those stones or towards the end. The tacky grabs her shirt and rips off like this swath of material right in the middle of her abs. And it just came off and stuck to the stone. It was crazy. And it was so cool because if you know Carly, she's got these badass abdominals, and it was just kind of showing through the shirt. And as she's standing there like an exhausted warrior, I just thought that picture was just awesome. And for anybody out there that captured that image, well, we need to use that somewhere in our sport because it really kind of defined what it's all about. It's particularly that last event, the grueling nature of it and what Carly put forward, and certainly what she got out of it. That was a lot of fun to watch. But I'm not a big fan of this Stone Over Bar. I think it just grinds out too much. It's outside of those moments like Carly and Meg. It's just not dramatic at all. And I think we expect more of that out of our final event. And I think maybe we got spoiled on it in a couple events that we saw over the years. And maybe that's why I fell in love with it, because I expected to see that same kind of drama every single time I watch this event take place. And lately I just haven't been seeing it. So maybe the bar was set a bit too high. Not to mention it's a grinder. It really takes a lot of time because they're allowing these essentially these athletes 30 seconds to load a stone over the bar. So if you can imagine, for those of you who didn't watch the live stream, which I'm going to say again, go watch the damn live stream. They're head-to-head facing a yoke bar, and one athlete's got 15 seconds to lap the stone and 15 seconds to put the stone over the bar. Back to the other athlete, back and forth until one falls off. Another athlete jumps in that reverse order, of course, and ultimately you're left with the final athlete. At this point, it was Ree coming in because she was already in first place to complete her stone load essentially by herself, which is very undramatic. And not only that, the athlete kind of knows where they have to be. And I'm not suggesting they don't know in a typical stone loading event, or a stone run that you might see as a typical last event in most strongman competitions, but it certainly doesn't lend to the drama, because a lot of times in those situations, the athlete is going against the unknown and they still have to kind of move quickly to get through it. Where we don't see that a lot, if an athlete's got a pretty decent lead in this event, they're ultimately just doing as many loads as it takes to get over the bar to win the event. And nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Those athletes deserve to be in that position. I just think from a spectating point of view, it's a little less dramatic. It's very time consuming, honestly quite boring in some cases. And I just like maybe to see maybe the stones come back as an entirety in the event to finish the event as a fifth event, the stone series, that is. I get it logistically. It's probably not the easiest thing to do. If you think about it, all you need to do is bring a yoke and one stone, as opposed to, stone platforms and 5 stones. But again, we're talking about if you want to be the best, you do the best, right? You want to be the best and be recognized as having the best implements, the best competitions, the best athletes, the best events. Then sometimes you got to go the extra mile to get that. So I think maybe not necessarily for PSL, maybe they're already rethinking this, but for a lot of guys, I think the stone over bar, the head-to-head stone, is kind of an easy event to do, kind of a middle-of-the-road type thing, and maybe for smaller events, logistically, that's fine, but I'd like to see maybe something else in place there, like a stone series at the end of that one. Okay, that was a ton of rambling. I'm not even sure if you guys appreciate all that insight. That was just more subjective and obviously outside of some of the actual stats that these ladies were doing in the show. As the show finished up, what was the final standings? I got them written down here. It was Ree, Kate, Conley, Sherry, Sari Zimmerman, Taylor Woods, Holly McRae, Carly Olvera, Meg Lotta, Crystal Stanzik, Christine Matthews, and Deanna Ferrer. That was your 1 through 10. I don't think it was any big surprise. Kind of those rankings fell. I thought Sherry was a nice surprise. I mean, she was a lot of fun to watch. I can't wait to watch her going forward. I can't wait to see Panda and Deanna get a full competition in. I think Crystal's an up-and-comer. Crystal, your new nickname is Crystal Quads Stanzik. Super powerful posterior chain on her and lower body. Meg, you're a grinder. So much fun to watch you compete. I wish you made it over here more, but we'll be paying more attention to you over there. Carly, no surprise. You are who you are. You are the most fit, strong woman in all of strong women, no question. And you're not afraid to take on competition. And you certainly have been taking on the best recently, and you deserve to be mentioned in that conversation. Holly, to no surprise, Holly's going to be at the top of all these shows. I know she came into this show with dealing with some outside circumstances and wasn't sure she was going to make it to the very end. I saw some of her posts on Instagram. So glad to see her there. She is definitely a name that needs to be mentioned with all these top names. It didn't affect her too much in our rankings. I'll get to that in a minute. But I expect that Holly was happy with her performance to some degree, but at the same time saying, just wait till the next show. I'll prove to you guys that I'm going to be in a lot better position to both mentally and physically to do better and get to the top of the podium. And as I expect she will. So there's my breakdown with all those girls. So getting to the rankings, as we know, we launched the 64s before the show, and we thought perhaps we'd see some changes, and we kind of did. And I'm going to explain to you why these kind of shifted around the way they did to some degree, without giving you the entire, all the notes of our conversation as our group and the rankings of these 64s. Ari obviously is the consensus number one still. Her comeback in this show was, to no surprise, at least it wasn't to me, even though she didn't win the deadlift and maybe she didn't perform on the log like she wanted to. Started off the show in the placing that she did over the first couple events, but yeah, she won it pretty handily towards the end. Kate, to no surprise, I think a lot of you guys out there initially were saying Kate needed to be ranked higher. Anyhow, we said, hold on, guys, hold on. Let this kind of play out, and it did as we thought it would. Kate ended up finishing the show in second place, and she moved up in our rankings to second place. Holly dropped down from second to third. Some of you guys would argue, well, Holly was in second to begin with. She took fifth in the show. What makes her get to third place? Well, it's pretty easy, right? Shannon and Kara didn't compete. So we can't necessarily reward Shannon and Kara for not competing, but at the same time, we're not taking them out of our top 10. This isn't college football. These girls don't compete every week, so we can't adjust these rankings like that based off a bye week because these competitions, of course, aren't, whether you're there or not, it's not, or if you're not there, it's not a bye week. So Holly moved down a place, and we can all argue it was just an off day for Holly for sure, but Shannon and Kira specifically kind of moved back a couple places in large part because they didn't compete. So when they do compete, there's an opportunity there to perform well to kind of move back up, as you guys could see that kind of playing out. Taylor, same thing. She moved up, so she's right behind Holly. So we got Ree, Kate, Holly, Taylor, Shannon, Kira. Sherry Zimmerman just launched herself with a third place finish. I don't think any of us that was uncontested. She actually blew our minds, quite frankly. She did mine anyhow, the way she competed at the show. She deserves to be in that top 10. Carly, of course, a constant performer. She's still there at 7. Panda and Deanna, I mentioned previously kind of in my show notes that, yeah, outside of their injuries leading up to those last couple events, they were in very, very good position to finish very strong in this show, particularly Panda. I mean, she had a shot at the podium, honestly. So to not be punished entirely for having that sort of one-off situation take place through injury, they stayed 9 and 10 respectively, and I think that's a pretty tight top 10. I think many of you would agree with this at this point. There were also other women in that group that kind of got to that peripheral, right? That we talked about that before with some of the others, like like Nadia and Cold Iron, and obviously we've Peyton Day and some others, of course, are becoming more of a part of the conversation because they actually competed. So it's important, right? Let's compete at the high-level shows so we can be recognized by all of us, not just the rankings people, but ultimately that we can start these conversations about where these ladies deserve to be mentioned among the best of the best within any particular class, men and women alike. So that's kind of our take on the new rankings. I'll post that out there for you today. There is something I want to announce to everybody in respect to the rankings. So kind of a rankings announcement here, and this is a consensus by our group. You're going to see athletes come up in our rankings that are going to be put in different weight class categories. And one of the things that we determined was if you haven't competed in a particular weight class in the last 12 months, you can't be ranked there. We have to draw the line somewhere. So essentially what we're saying is if I competed as an open guy, but I'm naturally a 105er, but I haven't competed in a 105 competition over the last 12 months. I can't be, if I was qualified to be, I couldn't be ranked with the 105ers. I'd have to be ranked with the open guys. So that's how we're moving forward. As you know, there's a few athletes out there. When we get to them, I'll mention their names. Some of you will be shocked to see them where they're at, but ultimately they're there because they haven't competed in a particular class within 12 months. So that was going to be kind of a rule of the group when it comes to how we rank these folks. And then you're going to see some people that are ranked in a couple classes. One, for instance, if she is ranked in 73s or 82s, Carly Oliveira, as I previously mentioned, is a perfect example of that. She competes in multiple classes. So there's a chance you may see somebody ranked in multiple classes as a result of their performances and of course, how good they stack up to the rest of the competition. So bear with us. We're getting more of this information rolled out to you guys. This week, we're getting out the 90s and the 82 women. So stay tuned. All right, guys. I am going to end it there. I think I rambled enough. I maybe need to tighten my show notes up a little bit, but I kind of gave you everything I saw. I know. Thank you, Clark. My son is in the room with me right now, and I'm still recording there, pal, so hold on a minute. And it's a pool day, so he's excited to get out. You guys enjoy the week. I want to hear all your feedback, of course, about the show. but more importantly about these athletes we're talking about and some of the questions I posed to all you guys on this show. So please get back with me. Let me know. We're going to get with maybe Tyler this week or next week. I know him and I spoke before. I like to give him the hard questions. So I've got a few for him right now. And if you guys want to add to that list, please do. Reach out to me, DM me, of course, on Instagram. So, and by the way, Instagram official strongman rankings is going to be out soon as well. So, anyhow, stay tuned, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.